We are here with the wonderful Tammeca Rochester of Harlem Cycle, a premier cycling fitness studio in New York City. My name is Trisha Tate. I am CEO of FinCore. We're a fractional CFO services company, and we are doing this series, Dancing with Numbers in Real Life. And the goal is to normalize conversations around money and finances and growth with regards to small business. So thank you all for being here early this morning. Thank you to Mika for being here early this morning. I know I did a very short intro, probably didn't do you justice, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your business. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I am Tamika. As Trisha mentioned, I own Harlem Cycle. So we're fitness and wellness spaces. We're mainly located within Harlem. Our studios are focused on indoor cycling, and it's important to note that we are the first and only indoor cycling studio north of 92nd Street in Manhattan. And that we survived the pandemic. From the pandemic, we actually grew to increase our studio locations and then also increase our on-demand reach. So we now created an on-demand wellness platform. We have international retreats. We do instructor trainings, and we are very community focused with a lot of community-led initiatives throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you. See, that's why I let the business owners always introduce themselves because there's so much more that we can learn. This is a short conversation, but it's a powerful conversation, and I want to just dive in. So, when I wrote my book, Dancing with Numbers, 2 years ago, I did interviews with a number of business owners, and I found that asking them a couple of questions really was revealing to them and revealing to me. So I'm going to ask you these two questions and play along, and then we'll dive in from there. So the first question is, um, what were your earliest memories of money? What were the lessons, and who taught it to you?
Okay. I would say, I my earliest lessons of money, they weren't very positive, honestly. I remember when I think we were in second or third grade, and I just remember we didn't have money. So I remember growing up knowing we didn't have as much as everyone else. But I remember one particular memory that always stuck with me was in second and third grade. We were going on a family vacation. My mom was taking me, my sister, and my best friend to South Carolina. I don't know where my dad was, but he wasn't able to come. But it was my mom and all three girls. And I remember talking with my mom, and she was just like, I don't have enough money for this trip. I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't, she's like, I remember her being very stressed on how she was going to pay for us to be there. And I remember, so, I kind of took on that thinking. So throughout the trip, I was like, I'm not hungry. I don't need anything. And I was like
Mm.
looking at my sister and my friend, and they're like, yeah, I'll have the burger with the fries and the milkshake. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I don't need anything, because I knew that we didn't have the money. And so I started, like, not expressing myself and my wants, because I was like, no, we got to save, because mom, I don't know. Mom says she doesn't know how we're going to be able to be here. And I just remember, like, pulling back on that experience, and it just, I mean, though it was a great, and we had a great time, I just remember kind of internalizing the fact that we didn't have any money.
Mm. So when you think about that experience and we bring that forward into your adult life and you're starting a business, do you see, any spaces thinking about your first year of business? Do you see where some of that lessons might have shown up? Can you give us an example? And if it hasn't, that's fine too. But I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, I do think that lesson has helped me in life. So even as our first year, and sometimes when you open a business, you want to throw all the bells and whistles at it. Like, I want everybody to have the premier experience. When you walk in, it's going to be this, this, and this, and this, and it's above and beyond what's needed to have an amazing experience, right? And so when I opened my business, I was like, we don't have no money. And it was true. But I went in with, like, how do I create a great experience on this shoestring budget and still make sure I can pay my employees and make sure I can cover these bills because like, I prioritize all those things and noting that, budgets were limited and we just didn't have as much. Um, and I think that's what kind of have helped us grow, honestly, is being able to
Mm.
pull back and have those cash reserves even when hard times come. Because fitness is very seasonal. It's a very up and down situation. It's seasonal. It's emotional. It whatever's going on political is affecting it. If there's a concert that night, it affects like. There's so many things that affect people's wanting to wake up early and go take our fitness class, and some of those are just so out of our control. So being able to kind of hold on a little bit more to cash reserves, I think is what has helped me.
Oh, been helpful. That is wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Um, can you think of any examples where um, that kind of lesson or that experience sort of hindered you in your growth in your business?
Yeah, so there are times where I'm like, okay, maybe we should invest a little bit more in marketing. We should invest a little bit in that. And I haven't. And I've been slow to pull the trigger because I'm just like, I don't have nobody. But realizing sometimes you got to pay a little bit to get a lot more in return, right? And
Right.
so it has taken me a while to invest behind things that I know you pay a lot upfront, but that should come back and double my returns because it's always a risk to see if you're going to get the double in the returns. Everything is a risk, and so sometimes it's held me back from taking those risks that could have propelled me forward a little bit more.
What's so interesting is I say this all the time that entrepreneurship is certainly going to challenge you because you wear multiple hats. And sometimes you have to wear the hat that feels uncomfortable or that challenges a form of belief system or way of being. And then
Mhm.
you have to shift. And as an entrepreneur and also as a woman 40 plus, I've learned that there are some things that we learned that helped us from childhood or from our younger years that have helped us to this point, and then it starts to hinder us, and we got to make a shift and a change. So, thank you for certainly sharing that. What were some of your goals and thoughts around like why you built and grew, or even started Harlem Cycle? What were some of the personal reasons why you started Harlem Cycle?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed cycling. I grew up in Atlanta, so riding your bikes when you grew up in the 80s and the 90s was the thing to do, right?
All right.
So you remember the time you go house to house riding your bikes. You know where everybody was based off how many bikes were in the yard. Um, and so
We
I
didn't
grew
have
up.
technology
We had
distracting us. We
no
had
phones
bikes
and
and roller
nothing.
skates.
Exactly,
And we had red
exactly.
light, green light, one, two, three. Street games.
Exactly. And if you want to know where people were, you couldn't call them. You just rode around and see what bikes were out there. That's how you knew. And so I grew up riding bikes. And then I came to New York and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna start riding my bike again, get back into this happy place of these memories and kind of tapping into that self-care. And then quickly discovered that New York City streets ain't the same as Atlanta streets. And it was so like I felt like it was a life or death moment the when I went on my first bike ride in New York City. It was crazy. I had never been had that many horns blown at me. I felt like cars just do not respect bike riders here. So it was just I was really shaken up by the experience. Um, and so a friend of mine mentioned I should just try indoor cycling, which of course, the skeptical me was like, why would I
Right.
do a bike that doesn't go anywhere? That doesn't even make sense. Like logically, I was like, I don't even understand how that works out. But I tried the
Right.
class, loved it. I got the concept immediately. I was like, people in a room, listening to dope music, having a good time. Like I knew this was like my place to be, but I just didn't. The places that were available to me. And mind you, again, we are the first and only cycling studio north of 92nd Street. So the places available to me were downtown and midtown.
Right.
And they they didn't quite have all the things I needed. Like the music was okay, but it wasn't music that I would ever choose to listen to. Like
Right.
if
Right.
you looked at
Oh,
my right, it was not on my Spotify playlist or anybody else's playlist that I knew we weren't listening to those songs. Um, but also there was like a level of camaraderie that was missing. It was more competitive. So it's like
Mm,
leaderboards and all these things, and people were very serious. Meanwhile, I'm having a good time. I'm like, yes, I'm here for the like. I'm getting a workout in, but I was like, why is
right.
this so serious? Because at the time I was a mechanical engineer. Life was serious. I didn't need serious on my downtime. Um, and so I was just like, it's something about the energy that was a little off to me. The music was a little bit off. And so from that experience, I was like, "Ah, that there has to be another way that we can, ride as a community and not as in competition with each other. There has to be a way that we can listen to songs that actually move our soul and get us connected. There has to be a way that we could just like, enjoy being around our neighbors and enjoy connecting as people. And but then I thought it wasn't their mission, right? It wasn't the mission of their companies.
Right.
And that's what the bigger problem was for me. Is like this wasn't their mission, and so I'm trying to create something for them that they don't even see as a goal. And so then I was like, well, then I'll make it my mission.
Hmm. So I got the mission of connection, connectivity, and community.
Hmm.
Connection and community. That's what you wanted to build at the end of the day. And I think that's a lot of business owners. If I boil it down to three things, um, in my on my website, I thought about like why is managing money such an important thing? Like, yes, it is important to have a financially stable business, but what is the ultimate why?
Yeah.
Right? What is the ultimate goal? And I realize for many people, they want to be able to make enough to provide for their families and their lifestyle. They
Hmm.
want to be able to grow something that, expands their legacy. And they want to be able to give back to their community and have some sort of connection and meaning behind what they're doing.
Hmm.
That's what right? That is
Yeah,
that
that's it. You said it
messy.
exactly.
These are the three things. And so now you're in Harlem, you built this wonderful space, you ride the waves, literally. It's a seasonal business and you're still riding waves. You've grown one studio and then you decide to go into a second studio. So I want to talk about how did you fund the studio? I'm assuming you had to get access to capital and you probably had to bump up against your mindset around investing money to grow, right? So, can you walk us through that process of deciding to open a second studio, getting access to capital, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So access to capital has always been a pain point for us. So I'll let you know. My first location was all self-funded. There was no capital
Ah,
investments. There was all self-funded. I actually had to continue my corporate job for the first year that we were open to be able to even just maintain payroll, and maintain my own my personal bills. And so the first and even then, I'll remind you, I was a corporate girl, successful mechanical engineer, six figure salary, all the things. I always grew up with the you should save your money. So I had significant
right.
401k, like I saved. And I couldn't get a loan. I couldn't get a small business loan. And,
Wow.
I won't name the bank, but one of the major ones. I went to the bank, did the whole application process, and the guy literally said, "Well, you're in an area that doesn't have indoor cycling." I was like, "I know, I'm going to be the first, right? Like, I know that." But what he was really saying was, "You're in an area that is redlined, and we're not funding businesses in a Black marginalized community," and that's what he was really saying. Because I have an 800 something credit score, the 401k that's intact, wonderful stream of income, and I couldn't get a $10,000 loan. Like, which I
That
would give.
blows my mind.
It blows my mind because you would literally give an 18-year-old college student a credit card with $20,000 limit. You give an 18-year-old going to college $100,000 student loan, but you can't give a small business owner who's been working in corporate America who has significant savings $10,000 for a business loan. Like, it makes no sense,
Right.
right?
Your personal financial statements alone should have made sense, but they were questioning your business plan,
They questioned the business plan,
the
and they questioned
the viability of
the
the.
viability of it in the community that I wanted to put it
That's
in.
right.
And
By
it
the
was
way, for those of you who are not from New York City, Harlem is predominantly what sort of background?
Predominantly Black. All minorities are in Harlem. We have a large immigrant population. Um, but yeah, it was they definitely he made it very clear that it's because of the area I'm choosing to put my business in. So then I self-funded the first location. Um, I got I pulled a little from my 401k, pulled a lot of my savings. My fiance gave helped a little bit because there were many months that I was like, we ain't hitting payroll. I'm in the negatives. Um,
Right.
and so getting that, having someone who could help me in the moment. But mind you, actually, he wasn't my fiance at the time. He was a boyfriend. He was a boyfriend at the time, and so he would
But he
sit.
was down for the
He was
struggle,
down for the
so
struggle. So he would help because I would be like, it ain't happening this month, and I don't have nowhere else to pull from. It's like we ain't pulling because when you open a business, when you open your doors, you ain't gonna have a million people run in there. Like
right.
you're gonna be in the red, but that red is a real number. You got to make up that shortfall. And I think that's where a lot of business owners aren't recognizing. Like on paper, you see negative numbers, and you're like, okay, but in real life, a negative number has to come from somewhere. Like it's a
That's
real
right.
number. It's not imaginary numbers. You got to actually pay that number. So the first business was all self-funded. Then to grow, I actually got my first loan from a CDFI that was actually Harlem based. So that made it a lot easier. And it was a very small loan, $10,000. Like I got my first $10,000 loan from them. And I actually used it as part of the down payment for the second location. And,
Mm.
going in very early in the second location was a great strategy because it made everything so much lower. Because I went in before the building was built. And
Oh
so
wow.
they were taking a chance on me, but I was taking a chance on them, and it was recognized so that I could get a lower down payment, I could get lower rates going in, and then from there, I've been able to grow and fund through grants. So I stay applying to grants almost every day, and then I've actually tapped into a couple more CDFIs from a loan standpoint. I have not made my way back to the bank yet, and I'm just like, I'm not going back until I actually need y'all because y'all got to, it's like it's still a sore point for me. But we've been
Yes.
able to grow from CDFIs and from grants.
So for those of you in the audience, CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. During the pandemic, they were considered the literal first responders of finance for small business owners because they tend to take on um, businesses of minority populations in low income, what's considered low income neighborhoods. They also tend to have some favorable rates, and they can be a little more flexible with their structure because of their credit requirements versus a large non-traditional bank. So, there are the traditional banks, there are regional banks and smaller banks that are also flexible and can be helpful. But community development financial institutions is also a pathway where I even know a lot of clients that we have been successful working with CDFIs in a way that they hadn't been with traditional banks. So I just wanted to share that for the audience. And I love it. You stay on grants because that's also a source of funding. And of course, the small business credit card is also another, I'm sure, another source
Hmm.
of funding for you. But it's a beautiful thing that you were able to bootstrap the first one. And then in my book, I talk about, don't freestyle your financials, have a money team. And sometimes you have the silent partners. And in your case, it was a boyfriend. It might be a mother-in-law that is a CPA or somebody that has a little bit of extra money. But small business owners, we know how to figure
Figure it
some
out.
stuff out.
Hmm.
We know how to, yes, we have some figure outedness. That's
Hmm.
the word that I coin and I use really, really often. Um, you are a mechanical engineer,
Hmm.
and so, and I'm a finance person. So we love data. So I'm curious what data or financial documents you use um, in order to make sure that you like are on the pulse of what's going on in your business. Like what are some of the metrics and data and numbers that you use in a fitness business?
Yeah. Well, I look at my P&L monthly. So
Okay.
making sure
Profit and loss
profit and loss
statement.
sheet. Yep, I look at it monthly. I look at our monthly spend breakdown of every single spend that's coming out of there. And every month I reassess anything that's on auto pay. Which
Mm,
this is and people I don't realize you lose a lot of money on things on auto. It'll be something simple like um, your Spotify account. Like, do you need the big plan where you could go down? Like, if you're only using one
right.
channel, it's like those little things. I look at monthly and see where there's some, and it's not going to save you a lot, but when you're looking at starting up, it saves because you don't have the extra money. Um, so I look at those things monthly. I look at kind of our COGS, our cost of goods sales, to be like, listen, some things are costing too much and it ain't giving me enough. And then I just look at our margins. Where is there opportunity to squeeze a little bit more? Like, am I not making enough on merchandise? Am I not making enough on, um, we do retreats, we do a lot of special events. We have an event coming up at the end of this month. Like we do a lot of special events, and it's like, okay, if the margin, I have a minimum margin for things because if we're not making money, then
Oh,
we have
good.
to really assess and many times, we have a lot of community initiatives that I'm not making any money from. Like that, the goal of it
But you're intentional about the goal
intentional
of
about
it.
it's very intentional. The goal of it is to get our community moving, but it's also the goal of it is to make sure our community is aware that we are here. So from a marketing standpoint, we're sewing back into the business that way. But from a financial standpoint, when you look at on my P&L, it's like this brought you nothing. But so I'm very intentional on what those initiatives are, and initiatives that don't fall into that category, we take a look at the margins and see what's happening there. So I take a look at those monthly at the end of every month.
Mm, wonderful. And then I'm sure you have to know how many people are in class, how many
Hmm.
studios are filled, when that's filled. Do you look at those things and how do you determine to like cut a class or start more classes? How do you
Yeah.
determine that sort of
That
stuff?
that is actually the hardest number to look at in our business, because it's no rhyme or reason sometimes why a class isn't happening. Many times, you can say, "Oh, well, it's the instructor," but you know what? Last week his class was full. This week is low. What's the difference? Janet Jackson had a concert last night, so ain't nobody wake up this morning for 7 a.m. class. Like it's like these are real
That is
things that
funny.
that affect the class, and so you sometimes have to step back and like look at all the things that are happening around the situation. And that was a true statement, right? Like I looked at the 7 a.m. My 7 a.m.s are usually always very strong, very strong. Got one of my top instructors who teaches the 7 a.m.s. This morning his class had 4 people, and I was like, this has never happened, like never happened in his class. And I went to Janet Jackson concert last night, and I saw like several of our clients there, and I was like, well, there they were. There was
And
the concert. Or
she
they
was at
woke.
Prudential Center
She
or
was at Barclays.
right. Oh,
And so, it's those things where you think are like, well, everybody didn't go to the concert and everybody don't, and you're like, no, they didn't. But other things happened. It's too hot this morning. It's too this, like it's so many things that could happen. So I look at those numbers, but you have to look at them kind of with a grain of salt to recognize
yes.
that it's a fluctuation and you just have to recognize the patterns in the fluctuation. But with adding and subtracting classes, I give classes about a month and a half. And whenever I add a new class to the roster, I teach it first. And
Mhm.
just because people know me more, my clients know me more. And so if I can't get anybody in there, you probably can't get nobody in there either. And so
Right.
if I start teaching it and ain't nobody coming, then we pull that back off. It's not going to happen. And so it's like those little strategies for when I want to add and subtract the class. But I definitely look at the fluctuations and recognize that it is not necessarily what's happening with your business. It's all the things around in the environment that's happening.
So let's go into the pandemic because I was at a business summit at Luminary and you were talking about how you handled the pandemic, which really negatively impacted the health and wellness industry. And can you talk to us about what were some of the financial decisions you had to make to stay viable during the pandemic? And then how did some of those those changes affect you in how you manage your business today, for good or for bad?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic was a tough time. I'm gonna be very honest. Emotionally, it was a very tough time. And I can't. Oof, it's. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Take your
so
time.
for as a fitness studio in New York City, we were closed for 18 months. 18 months of government closure, not just me saying we're not opening. 18 months ago, that was the mandate. No group fitness classes. And even when we opened back up, the mandate was you had to wear a mask while taking the class. That limited the amount of people that could even take the class. Um, so within the 18 months, my first decision, which was not an easy one, was I shipped our bikes out to our client's house. Now, mind you, I had just finished paying off these bikes. I had just finished paying off my credit card where I put some of these bikes on. That was the only thing we owned was these bikes, right?
Your asset. Yep, those are
My
only
one little
asset.
asset, and that um, and that's what even helped me get the CDFI. Like, it's like, oh, you own your bikes now. Great, you have some assets. Great. Um, and so I was like, well, we're going to ship these to our clients' houses. We use that as a source of rental income from them. And able to teach classes via Zoom because again, we're cycling. So you come to us because you don't have a bike. That's
Right.
like we're not, it's different for other, like yoga could easily translate online, but cycling is not an easy thing to translate to someone at their house.
Right.
So we shipped our bikes out, people rented them. We switched a lot of our classes too, and this has also become another stream of business for us. But we started creating our mat-based classes because all of us were trained in all kinds of strength classes, fitness classes. So we're all trained in it. It's just cycling is my preferred thing to teach. And so we started doing a lot more mat-based classes. We started doing some outdoor in the park classes. We still kept true to our community connection in those free events. So we still did our outdoor hikes. We still did our outdoor family walk and run. And we did some outdoor bike rides and checked in, tapped into City Bike and other outdoor bike clubs. And so we kind of expanded our community impact a little bit more and just kind of widened our business scope a little bit more to be able to survive. I
Hmm.
will say the biggest financial, I would say my worst financial decision during the pandemic was I paid rent full price all the months I was closed.
Wow.
Right. And part of it was the fear of, this landlord took a chance on me. It was so hard to get someone to buy into my business concept. If I don't want to be put out, this I want to be able to come back to our space without having any legal problems. So I paid full rent each month. And then not till I think we were like month 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 12, where a mentor of mine was like, "Are you crazy? Like you're in a pandemic. Why would you be paying? Why would you pay anything? You can't even physically go to your location." Um, And then I just had to talk with the landlord, and it was like, I can't. I, I did the best I can. I can't do this anymore. And they were like, okay, well, we'll just give you 4 months free. Oh, so y'all didn't need my
Yeah.
money? That was
They did need
that's
your money, but
me.
it wasn't their responsibility to tell you.
I was so floored, Trish. I was like, so y'all didn't need my money, and y'all just let me keep paying, and y'all was just like,
Yes.
okay, Tamika,
That was
thanks.
their business decision, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And and I was like, so lesson number one was don't financially get emotionally attached to other people and they income.
Right.
Do what's best for you. Um, so that was the biggest because I was even as I was telling this to my mentor, I was like, oh well, my landlord is she's an older lady, she's retired. This is what she does. He's like, you know too much of her story. Why are you in her? You know too much of her family business that you are not emotionally connected to this woman. You are not related to her. I don't care. Go have the conversation. I had the conversation. She was just like, okay, wow,
Right.
wow.
Right.
So that
Listen,
was
squeaky wheel gets the oil, and
that's it.
you got to negotiate, renegotiate to your point. But I understand. I understand the emotional investment and loyalty, right? If
Right.
that is your personal ethos, that someone was good to you, right? And we have been in this together, then, I'm going to think about them. And,
Yeah.
I have that personal ethos too until somebody shows me that they're not.
So they're not,
They're
right?
not worthy of my loyalty.
And yeah, yeah. But that
Yes.
is a lesson. Renegotiate. Put all the cards on the table and be like, listen, renegotiate. So
Yeah.
that was the biggest financial takeaway from the pandemic for me is
But you've
renegotiate.
also expanded the business virtually. You've expanded the community engagement part of it. You found other revenue streams, viable revenue streams that are outside of the studio. So, question is there going to be a third studio?
Well,
What's the what's the
right? Well, of course, the
How do you
goal
think about growth and expansion
expansion is to
now?
continue to grow. Well, there will be a third studio, but for both studios, I say have to make it to 80% utilization every single day before I'm expanding.
Okay. See,
And
there's another data point.
there's
There's
another data
another data
point,
point.
right? And I will actually go back to data points because the reason we went to a second location is when I realized I can't get any bigger in this one. Like
Mm,
we were at,
right.
we hit 90% utilization, but it wasn't as simple as just add another class because again, fitness studio, like people work out in the morning before work or they work out in the afternoon before work. So me having a 2 p.m. class was going to be an empty utilization. So I couldn't just keep adding classes. I had no more space to add bikes to maximize the classes that I had. We're already in there. Um,
Right.
and then keep adding also takes away from our mission. Like our goal is not to have a certain studio kind of feel. And so I was like, I couldn't continue to grow in this location. And so that was what led to the second location. I actually signed up for the second location before the pandemic. But I called them immediately, was like, y'all don't look at me. Y'all keep that little deposit. I'm good. And they were, and see,
Right.
that was my first negotiation. I was like, I'm willing to walk away from this deposit and everything. And they were like, no, you're fine. We'll hold it for you. Oh, again. Oh, you just got to speak up.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so
Ask for what you want.
you have to ask for what you want. But being able to grow outside of the studio is my top priority right now. Um, in a sense of being able to grow outside of the studio helps expand our in studio classes. So growing our retreat business, growing our events, growing our community impact, and then there'll be a third location.
Um, so now when I think about it, now when I think about it, if someone is starting their fitness studio or health and wellness concept, what are some pieces of advice you would give them from a financial perspective to be set up properly?
Yeah. I would say when first always run your numbers and be very what's the word I'm looking for? Make be very strategic when you're looking at your estimates. Your classes will
Mm.
not be in no 80%. They will be more like 10 to 20% utilization. Like be realistic.
By the way, how do you define utilization
So if I
in your
have
space?
say 20 bikes, then 10% utilization is two people in that class. Um, and so if you can run a class with two people in it and make some money and pay your instructors, pay your front desk team, pay for the air conditioning that's being used at that time, pay for the towels that are about to be laundered because of that, pay for that portion of the rent, pay for your bike rental fee. If you can run classes at 2 to 3 people and still be able to pay for that, then you're okay. But if you think that you're going to open a studio and if everybody's going to come, is not the way to really make a good estimate. And even if you're already in fitness and maybe you're working somewhere else, do know that everyone will not follow, right? And so that is also something that I think a lot of trainers miss is like, I would estimate about 20% of those people will follow, but you're not going to get 100%. So making sure you are doing realistic numbers. And I always say it's good to be pleasantly surprised, like
Mm,
versus like not having the numbers needed at the end of the month. It's better to be pleasantly
right.
surprised And so if you're running those numbers and you're like, okay, this works. When I did my initial estimates in my business plan for Harlem Cycle, everything was based off of 30% utilization. Like, and that 30% didn't happen until year one, till we finished the first year. And then I said, okay, I think I can swing it with holding on to my current job. And so
Right.
um, sometimes you got to hold on to things that you might, your spirit is saying it's time to go and I don't want to work here no more. But your pocketbook is saying different. Your bank account is saying something else. So sometimes you might need to hold on to it a little bit longer while you're building and while you're getting that utilization up and while you're getting those memberships in
I got you. So you gotta build a community, um, uh, kind of before you have a location, which is a major fixed cost.
there.
So you talk about being a mechanical engineer and being in corporate. Um, I'm going to assume that you had some positive feelings or positive relationship with money and numbers, but I would like you to share with me or share with us, um, what was sort of your journey relationship to money in the start of your business versus where it is now.
Yeah. So I was a person who saved all the time. Like, I also just I don't enjoy spending money. I like seeing my money in my bank account. I'm also, I don't even like things. I don't like to shop. I don't like to do any things like that. Not like to travel, but I don't like to shop. So y'all gonna see Tamika this little T-shirt for the next 20 years. Um, so I was someone who always just liked having money in my bank account. So that my relationship to money is I don't like to use it. And I definitely didn't like debt. So I had a credit card, and I still had that same credit card. Now I have two, one for points. But I had the same credit card I had when I was 18 to this date, and I didn't really use it. It was like emergency, like you had something pop up that wasn't ready and nothing. But now, as a business owner, I know how to use debt responsibly. Like if we, like being able to purchase things on a business credit card and knowing like the benefits of it, and being able to use it for other things. Like I just spoke at Essence Fest, and all my traveling things were from using the business credit card, the points that had accumulated. So it paid for the trip down to Essence Fest from just the points. Um, and so being able to use that, I think, is the biggest turnaround for me as far as a business lesson with money. The old Tamika would be like, absolutely not. I don't spend. I don't have debt. I don't charge nothing. I don't have no credit card. And now Tamika's like, charge it to the
Right.
Amex.
Congratulations on shifting your mindset, and congratulations on Essence Fest.
Thank you.
So, what's next for Harlem Cycle?
So many great things happening. Again, we're building out and really expanding our series and our workshops and our events. We have an event coming up. I partnered with another small business owner, Nikki Kimbrough, on Get Fit with Nick, and we're doing a Redefining Wellness for Women Over 40 event series. We kicked it off in April. We got a pool party coming up end of the month for our ladies 40 plus. So really expanding our wellness platforms to other avenues outside of the studio. Um, Retreats are coming back up. So we have our retreat coming up in April 2025, really expanding on retreats as another option for people who are just looking for something different in ways of connection and ways of adventure and ways of wellness. And then we're just continuing to grow both locations, growing them from our impact within the community and growing them from a client standpoint.
I love that. I'm always willing to be involved from a financial wellness conversation. So keep me posted there. And my last question as we wrap up this wonderful conversation with Tameka Rochester, founder of Harlem Cycle, is how would you describe your dance with your numbers? How would you describe it?
I think now we're in the tango phase of life. We sexy with it. We doing the you coming, I'm coming. We're in it together. So I would say that I'm definitely at a place where I feel comfortable with the numbers. I feel comfortable sometimes even seeing the numbers go down. I feel comfortable with, debt. I feel comfortable with knowing like the strategy behind the numbers and how it's going to help us propel forward.
As you say that, I don't know why I feel like life should be done to music. There's a song around being comfortable with you or being cozy with you, and that all of a sudden that started playing in the back of my head. I can't remember who sings it, but that came up. So you're in a comfortable tango
Hmm.
with your numbers. I love that. So Tamika, thank you very much for sharing honestly and openly about the growth of your business, the highs, the lows, and how you have evolved in your dance with your numbers. Please do come back, everyone. We will continue to have this series going a couple times a month. I want to get it to the point where it's every week. And we are talking to growth oriented business owners who have been in this game for a little while, whose relationship to money has transitioned so that you can also, one, feel like you're not alone if you feel like a non money person,
Yeah.
right? But know that you can evolve to a better place to be cozy and comfy. And the goal of Dancing with Numbers in Real Life LinkedIn Live series is to normalize conversations around money and growth and talk about growth in various industries and from various perspectives. So, again, thank you, Tamika, for your time here. And everyone else in the LinkedIn universe and the YouTube universe, I hope to see you soon for the next conversation. Stay tuned for the next business owner announcement.
Thanks, Trisha.